Hi, I'm Jason Gorber for ThatShelf.com, and we're here to look at this Pioneer Laserdisc player. You know, when we look at shiny discs, we're going to look at the biggest of all shiny discs.
Big shelf.
So there are many of you that this will bring back warm memories. There are others that will say, what the heck are you doing with this giant holographic thing? I haven't actually covered much in the terms of Laserdisc here on the channel. I thought it was about time to actually sort of bring that to the fore with this new purchase of a new-to-me Laserdisc player. Technically my fifth, but this is another story. This really should be, hypothetically, my sort of be-all and end-all player, but we're going to deal with that in a second. Laserdisc came out in the early 80s. The first time I saw, technically late 70s, and then into the early 80s by the time I saw it. I remember we were on a school trip. I forget what it was, some sort of sciencey thing. I don't think it was a science center, but somewhere. And somebody, this is before I'd ever seen a CD, and somebody showed us this 12-inch platter with aluminum substrate, acrylic on the outside. And I distinctly remember thinking, this feels like the future. This is the first time I felt like I had stepped into the world of Tron. Like this felt like I was on the precipice of something magical. And then when I found out, I got a little bit older, I found out about this video format. Everybody was obviously dealing with the sort of beta VHS nightmare, but the real cool kids had Laserdiscs. I mean, it's sort of the equivalent now, I guess, like there's a ton of people with CDs, a ton of people with vinyl streaming, but like the real hardcore have reel-to-reel. That's a whole nother conversation. But Laserdiscs were a fortune. The players were very expensive. It was very niche, but at the time, you were getting stuff that you just couldn't get any other way. This was the opportunity for you to have movies in widescreen, movies with commentary. I mean, King Kong Criterion is one of the best commentaries ever. It's a terrible commentary, but it was awesome. The first 10 minutes is the person doing it explaining what an audio commentary is at all, which is quite amusing because now that commentaries are sort of gone by the wayside for most discs, I think there's an entire, again, generation of people who would be surprised like, oh, why am I listening to a podcast that's going on at the same time in the movie? Nonetheless, this is what you got. Two-sided discs. Two different formats, because of course CAV and CLV, one had half hour per side, one had an hour per side. CAV was better quality per se. Each frame of the film, 24 frames a second, was actually on the disc, so you could do stuff like step through frame by frame. It was pretty excellent. The tray itself is this big giant tray. This particular player plays Laserdiscs and it plays CDs. The first one I ever had was one that played Laserdisc CDs and DVDs. I bought a combo player. My first DVD player also was a Laserdisc player, something that I bought at a pawn shop of all things. And it was my dedicated player. I still have it. But this for me, which is a CLD-D703. We're going to go into the details about it. But this is sort of the highest end player I will ever need or want. I only have Laserdisc for a couple titles. It fills me with joy. I still have incredible nostalgia for this. Again, I listen to records because I actually find some of the experience superior. There's nothing really on Laserdisc that I'm going to watch and visually it'll be superior, but this is absolutely a full-on nostalgia thing because I dreamed of this so much. That being said, there's a bunch of titles, supplementary materials, other elements available in this format that are simply not available on other physical discs. Of course, I can get rips of them, those that have generously and illegally provided many of these extras on places like YouTube or supplementary materials, places like that. But nonetheless, there's something to be said about being able to put it in the player on the rack and actually have it play there. So let's actually put this out because we're going to lift this guy out. This is the definitive version of Star Wars. I always love when they talk about definitive editions, and then obviously we've had decades upon decades of other versions coming out. I'm going to show a couple discs before I crack this open, just for those who can actually see. Once again, this is how they came. This is the sleeve, 20th Century Fox, old school. You can see Star Wars, doesn't say A New Hope, actually says Star Wars. And this came in this crazy box. Let's try to get this without destroying everything. So there's the story of this guy. Okay, so this is the Star Wars, nice black, silver. You're not going to be able to see it much, but there we go. And on the side. So you can see it's a little bit beat up. The reason it's a little bit beat up is I got the absolute last copy available at HMV at 333 Yonge Street in Toronto. I got the last one, and they gave it to me at what they said was cost of, at the time, and this would have been 1997, 98. At the time, I got this for 300 Canadian dollars, which is about 7-ish now. ridiculous for the 3 films. But what you got was something. Let's step back a few years prior. The first time I'd ever really had a chance to do it. I lived in Europe for a year, 95, 96. And I was in 96 and I was staying with my friend Anders. Shout out to Anders. In Malmo. And he was a person, I thought I had a pretty good Star Wars collection. His was even more preposterous than mine. And one of the things he had, this sort of mysterious, magical thing, was he had this set. And I was staying over at his parents' house. He was very generous. I stayed a few days there. It was wonderful. I had an amazing time with him and his family. He was so generous. And to this day, even though I don't see him much, I still consider him a good friend. I was feeling a little bit, I wasn't jet laggy because I lived in Europe, but I was a little bit sort of excited to actually dig into this. And I went to his, I think they had like a 20-inch set or whatever it was in the Laserdisc player. And I knew there was supplements, there was stuff on here, commentary elements for Star Wars that I knew I would only have a chance to see as part of the set. So I remember it was like 4 a.m. that I'm at his home watching Star Wars, my face glued to the television, keeping the volume down. And I was going through the commentary elements on this set. So if you open up this set, obviously you saw what one of the discs looks like. But the set actually has multi-discs for Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, of course. All on CAV, the good kind, the half-hour kind. And it had this hardcover book, which is the Creative Genius, the George Lucas hardcover book. Now, comically, I already owned this book when I got this set, but nonetheless, it's nice. Talk about really nice supplements. They actually have the Creative Genius of George Lucas as part of this set. But what this has on it, and one of the things, again, with a CAV that you could do is you can actually step through stuff. So it's sort of like, it's very educational, shall we say. And as the sets came together, it also included some audio commentaries. Now, this isn't like the audio commentary that we're used to in most discs, that it plays all the way through. This particular audio commentary is actually in chapters. So there's a booklet, you go through the booklet, and you see what's involved, and it has another very brief interview segments. I just listened to it actually not that long ago just to see how it held up, these elements. Some of them are actually incorporated into future Star Wars discs, but there's something, again, I love actually seeing it this way. And this is obviously the original cut, the 77, 80, and 83 cuts. It's so lovely to be able to sort of dive into this. And then there's other sort of short films, making of, behind the scenes EPKs and stuff like that. So yeah, for the Star Wars nerd that we are, certainly on this channel, has a chance to actually explore the definitive edition. Of course, I have the special edition versions. I have all kinds of other nonsense. Excuse me. So when the special edition trilogy came out in the late 90s, again, similar time, widescreen, this was going to be the futz with version. It came out on VHS and it came out on Laserdisc. And I've left my HMV price tag on there. $170.99 as a pre-order. You can see these ones were THX, Dolby Digital, blah, blah, blah. Special bonus features, the original theatrical trailers, behind-the-scenes footage, and the making of the special edition, including an interview with George Lucas. And yeah, so this other set included many other discs, not quite as nice, no hardcover book, but yeah, this was my ability to get the Star Wars Trilogy Special Edition again on Laserdisc. I subsequently got it on DVD, then I got it on Blu-ray, then I got it on 4K. So this certainly gets played a lot less than that, but the definitive edition actually is played a bit. This gets super complicated. The D1 master that they used to, which is a digital tape master that they ended up using for the all-analog video format, it's a whole thing. But the D1 master they used to actually make the Star Wars Laserdisc is what they actually included on one very special and very limited edition DVD release of Star Wars, where the only time they ever did, they released the so-called unadulterated version, or the original versions, the non-futz with versions. It is window boxed, so it's non-anamorphic. It's basically as clear, if not clearer, than what's on the Laserdisc. It's the same thing. So of course I could watch it that way, but I have it on Laserdisc, so why wouldn't I, if I'm going to bother doing that? Of course, there's others that have done pretty incredible work in terms of doing restorations. One day, maybe long after probably many of us care, we will get the original version, then people will just complain, why is this slow and boring? Why do the effects look terrible? That's a whole nother story. Many, many other crazy sets that I had an opportunity to get, but just sticking with the Star Wars thing, This was another big one for me. This was the Phantom Menace, right at the sort of tail end of Laser. This is the only way that this came out. Again, VHS releases abounded. This is pre-DVD. I mean, this wasn't going to be coming out on DVD for a couple of years. And so this was the way to actually own Phantom Menace. And in a funny way, this also is the best copy or version of Phantom Menace pre-fuss with, because of course there's the extended pod race scene, there's all kinds of stuff, there's a digital Yoda, there's all kinds of elements that were actually changed after the theatrical. So this is the way to do it. Now it is from Japan, with a fortune. It has baked-in subtitles. They're burned in. It's not like DVD or Blu-ray where you can turn them on and off. But nonetheless, you got it, and the sound is actually quite exceptional. The sound on this is really, really great. Dolby Digital sound. And the Dolby Digital bit rate on Laserdisc, for some of them, was actually higher than the bit rate on a similar DVD. And so you actually have better sound. I remember I brought a friend over, Chad, and we actually tested at the time when I had my Velodyne 12-inch subwoofer. We actually tested the sub just with the pod race scene on the Laserdisc just to hear what it sounded, and dial it in and just see how obnoxious and ridiculous we could be. Now that I have a 16-inch sub that I can hear down the block, that's a whole nother conversation to have. And then, I mean, I got a whole other, I have the THX versions, the standalone CLV versions of Star Wars, which are a little bit better, blah, 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 in terms of visuals, but not quite as extensive as what's going on. Those are the THX ones of the definitive editions, the 77, 80, 83 on Laserdisc before special editions, but CLV instead of CAV. I have those. But here's one that's fun. The Making of Star Wars as told by C3PO and R2-D2, and SPFX Special Effects The Empire Strikes Back. Now this was, again, included on some discs, some collector's discs, but when I bought this was absolutely impossible to find other than this. And you got William Conrad narrating this Making of Star Wars as told by C3PO and R2-D2. These are two excellent vintage making-ofs available on this laser video disc from 20th Century Fox. So this is one that I actually purchased with, at the time, my business partner. I got to keep it in the divorce, as it were. Or at least consensual breakup. I don't know what we want to call it. And then we got a bunch of other things that I just want to highlight. This is a big one. I was just reminded. I was just on the phone with my friend Jay, who promised me $20 towards this if I ended up buying it. He was absolutely an enabler. But this was such a big deal. It's so difficult to actually talk about how it felt to actually get something like this. You felt you were getting away with something. That you were so used to just like, run-of-the-mill VHS stuff looking terrible. But this truly felt like a film school in a box. I didn't go to film school. I watched a lot of Criterion Laserdiscs. The Brazil set has subsequently been released on DVD, on Blu-ray, and now in 4K. But this was a big, big deal. The Ultimate Special Edition, 3 years in the planning, this 10-side CAV Special Edition shows Gilliam's retrofuturist fantasy as he fought to have it released. So it actually has 3 versions of Brazil on it. It has the Love Conquers All version, the 94-minute Cut to Hell studio version. It has the extended version on all of these elements, and the version that the director's got, the one that he actually wanted to do and that he fought so much to have. But then it has production notebooks from Stopper to McCone, you know what I mean, Charles McCowan, production designer Norma Garwood, the costume designer, the original dream sequences and storyboards, all of these things, a 30-minute documentary, on-set documentary, and then the Battle of Brazil of video history, where they, just for Criterion in 1996, they assembled just to tell the story of it. This would have been hundreds of dollars, $300 probably, but it just felt like I was literally holding a grail. That the studios didn't want me to see these versions, but this crazy company called Criterion was putting this stuff out and actually allowing me to dive deep into something that I didn't even know. I'd never seen Brazil before I saw this, but I knew about the story of it, and this truly allowed me to actually experience it in really remarkable ways. Similar, I didn't get this stuff till later, but Disney, unsurprisingly, would do these incredible archival releases. This is long before they sort of just throw stuff up on streaming. This is their version of Tron, another film which is very, very influential on me when I saw it. Very transformative. My dad took me with one of his friends. I remember Scarborough. I remember being completely enthralled. This was another film that I think he fell asleep in, like he did at Star Wars. But yeah, deleted scenes with Tron and Yarl, rare production, pre-production animation tests, original soundtrack deleted from the film, etc., etc. But the box comes in this like very handsome outer box. You have a really nice booklet that actually gives all the details. And then, yeah, there we have the many discs that make up the Tron set. So yes, I have this in other formats. I could absolutely do that, but there's this, for me, is just a great amount of pleasure to actually have to show the kind of care that a bunch of this stuff was afforded at the time. Really, really excellent. Just a couple more, and then we're going to go back to the player. This was a big, big deal for me. I bought this at Tower Records in New York City. I guess Columbus Circle. It was somewhere up there. I think this was $300 US. Totally insane. Obviously, I have it on 4K now. I have many of the other elements on this. But this was, I felt, and my story with Citizen Kane, I may have mentioned this before, but certainly it's worth repeating. Citizen Kane was one of two films, the other being Lawrence of Arabia, but certainly this one, I went in super cynically when I rented it on VHS in the early 90s, because I was told it was the greatest film ever made. I had heard that repeatedly. And I'm like, I'm a young cinephile. How good can it be? I went in with the same cynicism that everybody seems to take to anything these days. And then I watched Citizen Kane and realized it was better than I knew a movie could be. It was just astonishing. And so my love of Citizen Kane comes from that level of just, show me something excellent, and that it's better than I could have even imagined. And so there are people who very much want to sort of sidestep this film or downplay its importance, or think that in the decades that have come that there's other films better, whether or not they involve somebody peeling potatoes or not. But this, for me, I don't care whether it gets considered the greatest film of all time. That's sort of completely redundant. I will simply say that this is a near perfect film. This is an astonishing accomplishment, and more importantly, the story of the film is really, really remarkable. And that's what I actually got from this, at the time, very pricey, but very extraordinary CAV version. I'll pull it out of this sleeve here. It's very thick. You can see how these sets actually worked, the sort of trifold. But look at this. Look how stunning this is. Just absolutely amazing. 3-disc set. Includes a Legacy of Citizen Kane interactive documentary, The Making of a Film Classic, visual essay by Kane scholar Robert L. Carringer, Hearts of Age, a rarely seen early film by Wells, theatrical trailer, exclusive new film to tape transfer, and the full feature format CAV. Now, other releases of this had things like the Roger Ebert commentary. There's obviously many things that are not on here, but nonetheless, this for me is one of those wonderful, wonderful releases that I still will have in my collection. It's not necessarily something I'll throw out and play necessarily on this player, but it's certainly not going anywhere. Same as these two. Breaking the Waves is a film that completely changed my life when I saw it at Cannes Film Festival. I saw it not knowing anything about it. I had never seen a film from Denmark. I'd never heard of the director. Nobody had heard of Emily Watson. I saw this film. There were standing ovations in the middle of the film. I sat in the director's row. And to this day, this is such a profound shattering of my expectations about what cinema could be, that Breaking the Waves is absolutely something. I'm doing what I do now in major ways because of this particular film. I've had the chance to speak to Emily Watson about the effect that it had. She was so sweet. I've spoken to Stellan Skarsgård. I actually interviewed him at Cannes about this, about another project, and again, I got to thank them. Von Trier won't give a shit about what I have to think about this film. But yeah, Criterion version of this. Special features 4 deleted scenes, complete European director's cut, so it's got peen. Promo clip prepared for Lars for the 1996 Cannes Film Festival, so again, the direct connection with Cannes here. The US theatrical trailer and the film transfer approved by Lars. And you can see on the inside, again, essays. So these beautiful gatefold versions, really amazing. So yes, I have other Criterion versions. Yes, I have other versions, even from Europe, multi-region stuff, but that's very important to me. And then we got this. This one's a little bit silly. Also a film that was a really big deal for me. But here's Chasing Amy, and it's going to be difficult to see, but I had my friend Adam actually went down to those, when Kevin Smith used to do these events in New Jersey, and he completely defaced the cover, drew a little mustache on his ex, I'm bad, I'm rich, for Ben Affleck. Yeah, remember those days? And then he wrote Jason, just some words, Kevin Smith. That's what he had signed at the time. And then Jason Mewes actually wrote some stuff there. Excellent. When I saw Kevin Smith actually did like a 3-hour-long Q&A with him afterwards, I sort of showed this to him, and he was very amused to see it again. So there's my defaced version of Chasing Amy. Back in the day, you can see I still kept the director's stickers. Those are all very important. This is the Godfather trilogy on laser, but this particular version is the Saga version that actually 1901 to 1980, and this actually plays, you can see, first edition, December 1992, number 3440, with Francis Coppola's signature. Inside, you get a booklet with all of this amazing information. And then you have the Godfather family look inside documentary available. And then you have all of these discs. I mean, just to show you what was involved with the movie, all of these discs that make up essentially Godfather 1 through 3, edited in a chronological order, essentially. Totally ridiculous that the TV version includes some stuff. I have yet to dive into this, but one of the reasons I got this new player is that I am now fully prepared to actually dive into this, the Godfather trilogy. It's not like I haven't watched The Godfather 1,000 times between this and the Saga, etc. We have certainly things to watch, but yeah, this is the kind of thing that they would actually do. Very, very special editions. Pretty amazing. So, there's a brief look at the whole Laserdisc thing. Let's look at the player now. So this player is, how to put it, the 703 is, they had the Elite series and then they had the Japanese stuff, the exclusive. This was about as good as the American players got. I don't pretend to know everything. I'd like to thank everybody online who pores over all of this stuff. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's a specific way of actually dealing with the transport and all that stuff. I'm actually going to open this up briefly. I have a Japanese screwdriver that I get to test, and we'll just look at the back in that. But you can see that the player has tons of functionality, including jog shuttles. You can actually dial, like professional video players, frame by frame. You can jog shuttle to fast forward, or you can do individual jog for frame by frame. It's a different way of interacting with it. It's pretty remarkable. The player itself has a ton of functionality. It obviously had digital outputs and all that stuff. This one has an added AC3 output on it. But yeah, I'm gonna grab the other camera. We'll look around the back and we'll actually talk about what's actually there and what this has that has sort of been Frankenstein. Then we'll open it up, we'll look in the inside, and we'll see what's actually involved in a new Laserdisc player. And by new, I mean new to me. So first of all, here's the back of the actual player. You can see that it is CLD-D703. Let's get that in focus here. And on the back of this particular one, we have a number of outputs, which are extensive. We have analog outputs. There's actually two of them, and this is what you'd see on Laserdisc. So you could actually put in a multi-system setup. We have digital out, regular digital out for CD, or just regular PCM stereo that you could get from certain discs. So that's the coax out and the optical out. We have IR controls. You have this synchro section, which is actually locked out. We have video out here, which is these two yellow, both video out, composite out. And then you have here two SVHS DIN plugs. And then this is the big thing for me, is that somebody, God bless, has actually added an AC3 RF out. That's a whole long conversation to actually have. Basically, the way that it worked at the time was that AC3 had to have a demodulator. So there's a specific box that you had to buy to have the digital out just for Dolby Digital go through the demodulator, and that's how you would get it. Totally insane, I know. Some receivers actually had the demodulator built in. I have a Pioneer one that's been working flawlessly for all these decades since. I'm just going to turn this around. So looking at the front here, obviously it's very straightforward. We have a power button. We have this great, no disc, we have this fantastic old school display doing what you would want it to do. And then it's here where you get a ton of real wild stuff right on the front. You actually have jog shuttle right on the front here, a bunch of noise reduction elements, the eject, play, pause, and start button, of course, the eject CD and the disc side A and B, because this is one of those flippers, which is fantastic. And then additional buttons down here in terms of the jog. So if I eject this here, it'll eject towards me, and you can see the sheer girth of how this actually is when it opens. But what's nice about these particular models is they also had a CD ejection if I eject this, and so that it would actually eject just the top tray part. If I just hit eject and direct CD is on, the green light, and I hit eject, just the middle part comes out. And that's the way that it works. Close that, turn this off, and then it's back to Laserdisc. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open this up and we're going to look at the mechanism inside. So I've removed the 4 screws on either side. There's 3 screws on the back. They're actually copper screws. You can tell the sort of level of care that Pioneer was certainly putting into these. Again, these 90s players are sort of that sweet spot between the amazing stuff that they were doing earlier and before they sort of found ways of, as the format was sort of trickling out, of making things a little bit cheaper. I think this is, again, for me, the sweet spot. Is an excellent player. Plus, it has AC3. A lot of the early players that are monsters don't do AC3. That's a whole nother complication. So as I open this up, it's obviously been opened before since it has the AC3 mod. Inside, we have very extensive old school boards. It's really like just a treasure trove of chips and all kinds of awesome goodness. I'm actually going to get the gimbal in here, and so we're going to go through a bunch of this stuff. So yeah, as we dig in here, you can see there's all kinds of solder joints and elements. Doesn't smell like cigarettes too badly, which is actually quite nice. And then all these different elements as they come through. This whole mechanism on the side here, this is what actually will flip the disc. What we're going to do, we're going to plug it in for a second just to show you how the actual mechanism works. But this entire sort of cavernous tank-like thing is what's required. These wires here, I'm betting these sort of 3 sort of simple wires there that are soldered right onto the board. I'm betting those actually attach to that AC3 addition on there. I wouldn't be surprised. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to eject it. I'm going to put the disc in here. This happens to be one of the Citizen Kane discs. I'm going to record it with my little gimbal here. Click. And then we'll go from there. I need to make sure that the CD light is off. I'm going to hit eject. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my Citizen Kane disc here. We're just going to eject it. You can see what the mechanism looks here. This massive mechanism. And then we're actually going to show the flipping of the sides. It's one of the later things that the later machines could do. Again, it's a 2-sided platter, so you used to have to flip them manually. The actual mechanism itself flips for you. So let me eject this. Let's see if I can do this. While here, we'll see this actually eject. And the whole system tray sort of goes out that way. We put the disc in this case side 1. We're going to close it, and then the disc goes. And you can see you have this giant thing that has to spin quite fast. I'll just hit play and have it go from there. And then the mechanism itself starts spinning. And I'm just here, and I can actually feel the air coming off as the thing spins. Now I can go here, and I'm going to go to side B, and we're going to watch this mechanism here. See how it rotates? And then goes over the other side. And that way, just by doing that, this entire tray sled mechanism here does this thing. It's the elegance of this particular tray mechanism, the epsilon or gamma, or whatever it is. I don't pretend to know it. I just know this is the fancy one, or one of the fanciest that they ever did. But the mechanism, I mean, the way that this is playing, even if the disc is not entirely flat, sometimes it makes a lot of noise. All the other ones I've ever had were very rattly, were very noisy. This just absolutely is playing this without any drama whatsoever. The mechanism, I mean, this thing is decades old, and it absolutely is playing as if it is brand new. I got one in a fantastic shape. I'm going here, going back to side 1. You see the entire thing actually rotates, and then it goes underneath, and then it's playing underneath. The laser head's now on the bottom reading this way. Let's go back to side B. We can just keep doing this without any drama. It comes up, flips, and then you can see it there reading from the inside to the outside. And the speed obviously will change as it goes to the outside, so it'll actually create a constant speed for the laser head. So I have plenty that I'll actually be diving into to actually watch here. Films new and old, just throwing them on, seeing how they look. I mean, on my OLED, they look okay. On my projector, they look kind of terrible. But there's still something to be said, something quite wonderful about diving into this sort of vintage, old school way of doing it. And just as I rotate this, and you can see the actual disc is playing, the outside's here, the sound system is ready to go. This absolutely will work. So here we are in 2025 with, you know, a mid-90s device that's as exciting to me as anything, frankly. I'm so pleased to actually have the 703 as part of my collection now. I'll be putting up some of my other players for sale, so if anybody's actually interested, you're welcome to message us. But yeah, I wanted to give a sense of the excitement and what's involved in these crazy discs that some people just have never actually had a chance to even see or watch. I had the question, like, what could I possibly watch on Laserdisc that I can't get in another format? Well, frankly, a bunch of these discs have stronger nostalgia for the format than for the actual discs themselves. But things like that Citizen Kane that has some extra elements that are not available other places. Certainly I have things like Strangelove that are very much that way. Elements that are concert films that have never been released any other way. The Star Wars films that are in edits that haven't been released on any superior format. It's all there. And if you're a collector like me, this is the kind of thing that you wish to hold on to. After all, that is why we have shelves. For thatshelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Thank you so much for watching. It's an extended video, but I hope you enjoy the video and the idea of what we actually have behind all of this. As I said, leave any notes in the comments if there's some specific things you want us to look at. If there's some tips that you have for this particular player, I'd love to actually see it. And one shout out I will say that I actually took this apart using this crazy Japanese style screwdriver that Mena with Mark was going on about. I didn't actually know that the Japanese had different screw sizes. And I got to say, taking this Pioneer apart was actually much more painless to do this. I felt that the screwdriver was actually going in. So big shout out to being able to buy the fact that the quote-unquote Phillips end, the star end on Japanese is slightly different than the Phillips end everywhere else. Seems perfect when you think about Sony Phillips and see the introduction of Laserdisc, all of this craziness. We could go on and on, but we're not going to. Instead, I'm going to encourage you to hit subscribe, to follow us on social media, go to the website and support our writers, and we'll see you next video. All the best. Take care.